All right, welcome back. This is Computer Science 164. This is Lecture 1, and today we actually dive into all things related to design, some of the technical things we'll be doing throughout this semester, and giving you a sense of where you'll be headed for your very first project. So recall from last week that we'll have weekly labs. We're still finalizing times and place with the registrar folks, but for now we will have labs, let's say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. This is in Pierce 301. It's the top floor of Pierce, which is at the engineering school. It's a really nice new space that fits about 40, 50 people. All at open workspaces, and you bring your laptop, you bring your power cord, and these will be hands-on opportunities to not only experiment with some of the ideas of the week, but also for one-on-one design guidance from multiple teaching fellows that will be staffing each of these. They are optional, and the lab activities that you do during these things will be placed online so that if you and or your partner can't make some week or any week, realize that you can still follow along at your leisure on your own. So ideas. So the first project and the third project are going to be assigned by us, the staff. But the second and fourth projects, recall, are up to you to choose, whereby you and your partner will decide over the next few weeks exactly what mobile web app you would like to make, what mobile iOS app you would like to make, propose it to us by the dates on the syllabus. We'll give you then some feedback, and then you'll be off for that 3 or 4 week period implementing it. If you would like, though, to post ideas for classmates, or if you've just got so many ideas that you want at least someone to go do it, do feel free to post to this website here. We made a new mobile category, and just over the weekend we actually solicited ideas from staff and faculty all across campus, so you might see a lot of folks from outside of the class posting ideas. What we've told departments is that for those choice projects, you are quite welcome to collaborate with one or more administrators or tech people on campus. For instance, if you work for some department or even some student group that has an actual problem that they would like solved in a mobile context, that's fine if you're actually delivering a product to a group or department that would actually use it, so long as the work is primarily that of you and your partner. It's certainly fine, though, for the staff or even student group leaders to provide you with the so-called design or business requirements of the app if your project might actually then solve something useful on campus. So realize that is encouraged and allowed. All right, so a little warm-up. What we'll do today is look at some things very specific to mobile, but then we'll take a step back and talk more generally about how you can implement well-designed web-based applications, and along the way we'll introduce some terminology, some jargon, and also some of the technologies you'll be using over the semester. So one sort of softball question at first, if only to get things flowing. So there's this dichotomy right now in the world of web apps versus native apps. And someone want to just toss out a layman's definition of these two? What's the distinction? Yeah. Perfect. So a web app is something implemented in HTML, JavaScript, CSS typically, and it's meant to run inside of a web browser, whether it's on an iPhone or Android or BlackBerry or Windows mobile phone. It's meant to execute within the confines of a browser. So to use that app, you have to obviously pull up a URL or follow some link to get to it. And a native app, by contrast, is something you would actually download from Apple Store, from an Android store, from Amazon, or whatever the delivery mechanism is for your particular operating system. You can download compiled apps, and those compiled apps are typically written in languages like Java, or in the case of iOS, Objective-C, and you have to, like you did, say, in CS50, compile the source code you write, actually then upload it to someone else's server, click a link in some app store, and voila, now you have compiled code. So who cares? Why the distinction? And right now, and probably at least for the next couple of years, this is kind of the first design decision you have to make if you're trying to make something for mobile devices. What design decisions or requirements might push you toward one or the other? Just based on your own consumer understanding of these two things. Yeah?
It's easier to use a native app on your phone. Just push a button.
OK. So it's a little easier to use a native app on your phone, right? You push a button, and it's there. You don't have to open Safari or whatever the browser is. You don't have to type in a URL. You don't have to find a link. You just push the button, and it's there. So that's compelling? Yeah?
It's a little more involved to update a native app, because you have to sort of submit it to maybe a store and then have the consumer click on it, whereas a web app you can just keep updating.
Perfect. So there's a downside too. Native apps come with these hurdles, particularly in Apple's case, which is a little vigilant, or excessively so, when it comes to approving or disapproving apps for the store. So that's to roll out new updates or new programs altogether, you need someone else's blessing. Thankfully, Apple's gotten better over the past couple years about rolling out updates quickly, but you do need still someone else's involvement. Yeah, I'm back.
A web app has the ability you can just access it from anywhere. You don't have to download something to a new computer every time you want to use it.
OK, perfect. So web apps, though, by contrast, work anywhere, and in fact, on multiple devices, not just the one that you had in mind that we would be using. Other thoughts? Yeah?
I think it puts sort of a sense of legitimacy to have your own native app, because I think while a lot of companies or whatever want their own native app.
Yeah, I agree. And this one's a little harder to sort of explain why. But definitely right now, I do think there's this mindset where native apps just are cooler. They're sexier. They're more real in that you actually do have to go through some process of downloading it. And the funny thing is, on Android phones and on iPhones, you might not have ever done this, but almost always you can open the browser, visit some mobile website, and then click one of the icons on the bottom is, and then say, add icon to home screen, or whatever the text is. And then you actually have what appears then to be a native application. In fact, on iOS, when you do that and add a bookmark to your home screen and then touch the icon, they'll even remove the Safari address bar. So it actually looks like an actual app, but this just isn't done all that often. Yeah? So very true. If you want to make money, you kind of have to go through an app store, at least in the iOS case where they require that you go through them. So they take their 30% cut. Yeah?
Being listed on an app store can give you free publicity, especially if you're in the top 25 figures.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the publicity aspect of it. There's like the top apps categories, right? The World Wide Web is a huge place, but the App Store is at least a little more narrowly defined. So if you sort of hit it right and get something out there that people like, you sort of get these nice mushroom effects. But what about more technologically? Like what's compelling about native over web app? Yeah?
Native apps usually have better performance.
OK, so you have better performance. You have access to native hardware, things like hardware acceleration for graphics in particular. In fact, most of the fanciest games you've been playing these days, with some exceptions, have been native because they're really designed to run on the actual hardware. Yeah?
The UI is a lot easier to make it kind of look seamless and integrated with the, especially for iOS, whereas for
Definitely.
do some kind of clever tricks to make it look more like native.
Perfect. And we'll see this quite soon today, whereby you can mimic the UI of an Android phone, an iPhone, Windows Mobile. We're using CSS and JavaScript and HTML, but it's just not quite as polished. And if you're trying to make something that people really like and really maybe want to pay for, these kinds of things can be compelling. And one other I'll toss out there, too, is that you get access to more features in the hardware. Typically, when using a native application, you can use the accelerometer if applicable, or the gyroscope, or the compass, or any number of other hardware-specific features that increasingly are becoming more exposed to JavaScript in browsers, either natively by the browser or via various frameworks that we'll talk about over the course of the semester. But that, too, is kind of compelling. If you want to use the accelerometer, you kind of have to go with some kind of native app. All right, so that's the stage. Now some of the constraints. So this is just a little screenshot from Apple's documentation. And this kind of goes without saying. The screens are smaller, right? So on the one hand, this is nice in that you have to design less screen real estate. But it's also fairly confining in that you have to interact with the lowest common denominator, which is going to be a user's finger of some sort. And you actually have to confine your user interface to be easy to use. And that's definitely been the theme here. So one of the things we'll talk about over the course of the semester is also what you should be keeping in mind when it comes to designing good software from a user experience perspective. So what does it mean to make a mobile web app? Let's get some definitions out of the way. So here is a mobile web app. If you go to m.harvard.edu in your iOS phone or BlackBerry or whatnot, it kind of looks like a mobile app. Why? Well, it's just because whoever made this application used Photoshop and designed icons that were like 57 pixels by 57 pixels. Someone wrote some CSS that put enough padding or margins around each of those clickable anchor tags so that it looks like it's actually a mobile app, but in fact, a mobile native app. But in reality, all you're doing is using sort of age-old tricks in HTML that you might have been using for years to just make something that fits on a screen. And in fact, you could make a mobile web app just by firing up Chrome or whatever browser you have on your own computer, opening gedit or Notepad or whatever text editor you have, and just start writing HTML coupled with some CSS. And then if you really want to get fancy, you can do things like JavaScript. And even though this here is just a screenshot, recall that on last Monday, I did pull up this iOS simulator. For those of you with Macs, realize that as part of the first staff project, you'll be able to download this for free, assuming you have a Mac that's running Lion. But if you don't yet have a Mac or won't be having a Mac during the semester, realize that it won't be until Monday, March 19th, I think we say on the course's website, that you'll actually need a Mac. The first half of the course can be done on most any platform. So let's go pull up Safari here. Let's go and pull up, let's see, a new window here, new page. And here is all caps, m.harvard.edu. Let's see what happens, and voila. So there it is. So in fact, this is actually cached. There was a nice little design feature of harvard.edu, whereby if you actually go, actually, maybe it wasn't m.harvard.edu. Let me try this once more and see if I can have a nice pedagogical point. Harvard.edu. There it is. Stand by. Not the way to implement a mobile website. OK. So what happened there? So it was appearing to load the